The desert heat shimmered off the concrete runway as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stepped down from the transport aircraft at Forward Operating Base Courage. Her medical bag hung heavy on her shoulder, filled with supplies that could mean the difference between life and death. At 26, she had already served 3 deployments, but this assignment felt different. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Maria had earned her place among the elite through years of rigorous training and countless hours saving lives under fire. Her hands had pulled wounded soldiers from the brink of death in places most people could never imagine. Yet as she walked toward the briefing tent, she could feel the skeptical stares from some of the special operations personnel already stationed at the base. The SEAL team she was assigned to support had a reputation that preceded them. Led by Commander Jake Mitchell, they were known for taking on the most dangerous missions in the most hostile territories. Mitchell himself was a legend among Special Forces operators, a man who had earned his stripes through 15 years of combat operations across multiple theaters of war. As Maria approached the command tent, she could hear voices discussing the upcoming mission. The intelligence reports painted a grim picture. A high-value target had been identified in a heavily fortified compound approximately 40 kilometers from their current position. The target was believed to be planning a major attack on coalition forces, and time was running out. "Sir, with all due respect, shouldn't we be getting a real operator for this mission instead of just a medic?" The voice belonged to Petty Officer Collins, a sniper who had been with the team for 2 years. His tone carried the dismissive attitude Maria had encountered too many times before. Commander Mitchell looked up from the tactical maps spread across the table as Maria entered the tent. His steel-gray eyes assessed her quickly, taking in her confident posture and the quiet determination in her expression. He had read her file thoroughly and knew her impressive track record, but he also understood the concerns of his team. "Staff Sergeant Santos, welcome to the team," Mitchell said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "I trust your journey was uneventful." "Yes, sir, thank you," Maria replied, setting her gear down and stepping forward to examine the mission briefings. "What's our timeline for the operation?" Collins exchanged glances with 2 other team members, Sergeant Rodriguez and Corpsman Hayes. The skepticism in their expressions was unmistakable. They had worked with combat medics before, but this mission was different. They would be operating in extremely hostile territory with minimal backup support. "We move out at 0300 hours, Mitchell explained, pointing to various positions on the satellite imagery. "The target compound is here, surrounded by open terrain for approximately 800 meters in every direction. Intelligence suggests multiple hostile combatants, possibly including foreign advisors with advanced training." Maria studied the terrain carefully, her mind already working through potential casualty scenarios and evacuation routes. She had learned long ago that preparation was the key to keeping people alive when everything went wrong. The compound's isolated position meant that if anyone was wounded, she would be their only hope for survival until they could reach proper medical facilities. "What's our extraction plan if things go sideways?" she asked, her finger tracing possible helicopter landing zones on the map. "There's a clearing here, about 2 clicks north of the target," Mitchell replied, appreciating her tactical thinking. "But if we need emergency extraction, the closest safe zone is this ridgeline to the east." Collins leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. "Look, Doc, no offense, but this isn't a training exercise. When the bullets start flying, we need everyone focused on the mission, not worrying about playing nurse." The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Maria had heard variations of it throughout her career, and she had learned that actions spoke louder than words. She met Collins' stare directly, her voice steady and professional. "Petty Officer, I've kept operators alive in Fallujah, Kandahar, and a dozen other places where people said I didn't belong. My job is to make sure everyone comes home, including you. I suggest you worry about your own responsibilities and let me handle mine." Rodriguez whistled low under his breath, impressed by her composure. Hayes nodded slightly, remembering stories he had heard about medics who had proven themselves under fire. But Collins remained unconvinced, his expression hardening. "We'll see about that, Doc. This isn't some routine patrol where you patch up scraped knees. We're going after serious players in their own backyard." Commander Mitchell raised his hand, cutting off the brewing argument. Enough. Santos is here because she's the best combat medic available for this operation. Her record speaks for itself. Collins, your concerns are noted, but she's part of this team whether you like it or not. The briefing continued for another hour, covering everything from radio frequencies to rules of engagement. Maria absorbed every detail, asking pointed questions about the enemy's capabilities and the team's standard operating procedures. Her professionalism gradually began to chip away at some of the resistance from the team members. As the meeting broke up, Mitchell approached Maria privately. His expression was serious, but not unkind. Santos, I want you to know that I specifically requested you for this mission. Your reputation for keeping people alive under impossible conditions is exactly what we need out there. Thank you, sir. I won't let you or the team down. I believe that, but I need you to understand something. These men have been working together for months, and trust is everything in this business. Collins and the others aren't trying to be difficult. They're just protective of the team dynamic. Maria nodded, understanding the delicate balance of unit cohesion. I get it, sir. I've been the outsider before. I just need a chance to prove myself. You'll get that chance soon enough. Get some rest. Tomorrow night is going to be a long one. As Maria made her way to the temporary quarters assigned to her, she could hear the team members discussing the mission in low voices. The skepticism was still there, but she had detected a slight shift in tone. They were beginning to realize that she was serious about her responsibilities and wouldn't be a liability in the field. She spent the evening meticulously checking her medical supplies, organizing everything for maximum efficiency in combat conditions. Each bandage, each medication, each piece of equipment had its specific place. She knew that in the heat of battle, seconds could mean the difference between saving a life and losing it. The night air was cool as she stepped outside to clear her head before trying to sleep. The base was quiet except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional radio chatter from the command center. Stars filled the desert sky, providing a stark contrast to the dangerous mission that awaited them. Collins appeared from the shadows, his approach cautious. For a moment, they stood in silence, both looking up at the constellations above them. Finally, he spoke, his voice lacking its earlier hostility. Look, Doc, maybe I came on a little strong earlier. It's nothing personal. I've just seen what happens when team chemistry gets disrupted during critical operations. I understand, Maria replied simply. But I'm not here to disrupt anything. I'm here to keep you and your teammates alive so you can complete the mission and go home to your families. Collins studied her profile in the dim light. You really think you can handle what we're walking into tomorrow night? Maria turned to face him directly. Petty officer, I've performed emergency surgery under mortar fire, evacuated wounded soldiers while being shot at, and kept people breathing when their lungs were full of blood. Whatever we face tomorrow night, I'll be ready for it. Something in her tone convinced Collins that she meant every word. He nodded slowly, a grudging respect beginning to form. All right, Doc. I guess we'll find out soon enough. As he walked away, Maria allowed herself a small smile. She was one step closer to earning the team's trust, but she knew the real test would come when they were in enemy territory with lives hanging in the balance. The mission ahead would challenge everything she had learned about combat medicine and teamwork under pressure. The desert wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of dust and diesel fuel from the base operations. Somewhere out there in the darkness, their target was planning operations that could cost countless lives. In less than 18 hours, Maria and the SEAL team would be moving through hostile territory to stop those plans from becoming reality. She took one last look at the stars before heading inside to get whatever rest she could manage. Tomorrow night would test not only her medical skills, but also her ability to function as part of an elite team under the most dangerous conditions imaginable. The skeptics would be watching her every move, waiting to see if she could live up to her reputation when everything was on the line. The pre-dawn darkness enveloped the team as they moved silently across the desert terrain toward their objective. Maria had blackened her face like the others and checked her equipment one final time before they departed the forward operating base. Her medical bag was streamlined for combat operations, containing only the most essential supplies she would need to keep the team operational. Commander Mitchell led the patrol with the confidence of someone who had navigated hostile territory countless times before. Behind him, Rodriguez and Hayes moved like shadows, their years of training evident in every step. Collins brought up the rear, his sniper rifle secured across his back as he constantly scanned for potential threats. Maria moved in the middle of the formation, her senses heightened as she absorbed the rhythm of special operations movement. The compound appeared on the horizon, just as the intelligence reports had predicted. Through their night vision equipment, they could see the concrete walls and guard towers that surrounded the target building. Heat signatures from the thermal imaging revealed at least 6 sentries patrolling the perimeter, with more personnel likely inside the main structure. Mitchell raised his hand, signaling the team to take cover behind a small rise in the terrain. They were now within 800 meters of their objective, close enough to observe enemy movements but far enough away to remain undetected. The commander pulled out his field glasses and began studying the compound's defensive positions. 2 guards on the north wall, 1 in each tower, he whispered into his radio. Rodriguez, can you get a clean shot on the east tower from that position? Rodriguez moved to a better vantage point, setting up his weapon with practiced efficiency. Affirmative, sir. Clear line of sight on both targets. As the team prepared for their assault, Maria noticed movement near the compound's rear entrance. A vehicle was approaching from the south, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Mitchell cursed under his breath as he watched 3 additional personnel exit the vehicle and enter the compound. Change of plans, the commander announced quietly. We now have 9 confirmed hostiles, possibly more. This complicates our extraction timeline significantly. The added personnel meant increased resistance and a higher probability of casualties during the assault. Maria checked her medical supplies once more, ensuring that everything was easily accessible. She had trained for scenarios exactly like this, but the reality of impending combat always brought its own unique challenges. Collins moved into his overwatch position on a rocky outcropping approximately 300 meters from the compound. His rifle was equipped with a high-powered scope that would allow him to provide cover fire during the team's approach and withdrawal. As he settled into his shooting position, he keyed his radio. Overwatch in position. I have clear fields of fire on the main approaches. Mitchell acknowledged the report and began coordinating the final approach. The plan called for Rodriguez and Hayes to breach the front entrance while he and Maria moved to secure the rear of the compound. Once inside, they would locate the high-value target and gather any intelligence materials before extracting to the predetermined rally point. Remember, we need this target alive if possible, Mitchell reminded the team. But if he poses an immediate threat, do whatever it takes to protect the mission. As they began their final approach, Maria felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded combat operations. Her training had taught her to channel that energy into heightened awareness and faster reaction times. Every shadow could conceal an enemy. Every sound could signal the beginning of a firefight. The assault began with Rodriguez and Hayes simultaneously neutralizing the perimeter guards with suppressed weapons. Their movements were precise and coordinated, the result of countless hours of practice in similar conditions. Within seconds, they had eliminated 2 threats and were moving toward the main entrance. Mitchell and Maria advanced on the rear of the compound, their approach covered by Collins from his overwatch position. As they reached the back wall, they could hear voices from inside the main building. The target was apparently conducting some kind of meeting, which meant multiple personnel in close proximity. 3 tangos moving toward the front entrance, Collins reported through the radio. Rodriguez and Hayes are about to have company. The sound of gunfire erupted from the front of the compound as Rodriguez and Hayes engaged the enemy forces. Maria could hear the distinctive crack of AK-47 rifles mixing with the controlled bursts from the team's weapons. The element of surprise had been maintained for less than 30 seconds before the compound erupted into chaos. Mitchell breached the rear door with a small explosive charge, and he and Maria moved inside to find themselves in a corridor that led toward the main meeting room. They could hear shouting in multiple languages as the enemy personnel tried to organize their defense against the unexpected assault. As they advanced down the corridor, a door suddenly opened and an armed combatant appeared directly in front of them. Mitchell engaged the threat immediately, but not before the enemy fighter managed to fire several rounds in their direction. One of the bullets struck Mitchell in the shoulder, spinning him around and causing him to drop his weapon. Maria reacted instantly, pulling Mitchell behind cover while simultaneously drawing her sidearm to engage the threat. Her shots were accurate and effective, neutralizing the enemy before he could fire again. With the immediate threat eliminated, she turned her attention to Mitchell's wound. "Sir, I need to check that shoulder," she said, her training taking over despite the chaos around them. "Negative. We need to complete the mission first," Mitchell replied through gritted teeth, trying to retrieve his weapon with his uninjured arm. Maria could see that the bullet had passed through the soft tissue of his shoulder without hitting any major blood vessels. But the wound was bleeding steadily and would compromise his combat effectiveness. She applied a pressure dressing with quick, efficient movements while keeping watch for additional threats. "Commander, you're losing blood and that arm is compromised. Let me patch this properly so you can function." Before Mitchell could protest further, the sound of intense gunfire from the front of the compound indicated that Rodriguez and Hayes were facing heavy resistance. Colin's voice crackled through the radio with urgent updates on enemy movements and additional vehicles approaching the compound. Multiple contacts inbound from the south. "Looks like reinforcements. Approximately 4 vehicles with heavy weapons. We need to expedite this operation immediately." Maria finished stabilizing Mitchell's wound and helped him to his feet. Despite the injury, the commander was determined to complete the mission. They moved deeper into the compound, following the sounds of voices that led them toward their primary objective. The high-value target was located in a room at the center of the building, surrounded by maps and communication equipment that confirmed his role in planning attacks against coalition forces. When Mitchell and Maria breached the room, they found him attempting to destroy documents and computer files that contained critical intelligence information. "Hands up now," Mitchell commanded, his weapon trained on the target despite his wounded shoulder. The target initially appeared to comply, but as Maria moved to secure the intelligence materials, he suddenly produced a hidden weapon and opened fire. Mitchell's reflexes were slowed by his injury, and he was unable to respond as quickly as the situation demanded. Maria threw herself sideways, using her body to shield the wounded commander while simultaneously returning fire. Her shots were precise and effective, neutralizing the threat before he could cause additional casualties. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 seconds, but it demonstrated her ability to function as both a medic and a combatant when the situation required it. "Nice shooting, Doc," Mitchell said, genuine respect in his voice as Maria helped him to his feet once again. "Thank you, sir. Now let's grab this intelligence and get out of here before those reinforcements arrive." As they gathered the critical documents and computer equipment, the sounds of battle from the front of the compound intensified. Rodriguez reported that he and Hayes were running low on ammunition and needed immediate support or extraction. Collins was engaging multiple targets from his overwatch position, but was also under increasing pressure from enemy forces. The mission had achieved its primary objectives, but getting out alive was going to require everything the team had learned about working together under extreme pressure. Maria's actions had already begun to change the team's perception of her capabilities, but the most dangerous part of their operation was still ahead of them, as they fought their way out of the compound toward the extraction point. The sound of approaching vehicles grew louder as Maria and Mitchell prepared to fight their way out of the compound. Through the radio chatter, they could hear that Rodriguez and Hayes were pinned down near the front entrance, taking heavy fire from multiple directions. Collins was doing his best to provide covering fire from his position, but the enemy reinforcements were arriving faster than anticipated. "We need to link up with Rodriguez and Hayes before those vehicles get in position," Mitchell said, clutching his wounded shoulder but maintaining his command presence. "If they set up a perimeter around this compound, we're going to have serious problems getting to the extraction point." Maria nodded, checking her ammunition and medical supplies. The intelligence materials they had recovered were secured in Mitchell's pack, but their value would be meaningless if the team didn't survive to deliver them to headquarters. She could hear the distinctive sound of heavy machine guns being mounted on the approaching vehicles. As they moved through the compound toward the front entrance, they encountered 2 enemy fighters who had been moving to flank Rodriguez and Hayes. The engagement was brief but intense, with Maria demonstrating the same precision and tactical awareness that had impressed Mitchell moments earlier. Her transition from combat medic to fighting alongside the team was seamless. "Doc, can you get a bandage on Hayes? He took one in the leg," Rodriguez called out as they reached the front of the compound. Maria immediately moved to Hayes' position, keeping low to avoid the incoming fire while assessing his wound. The bullet had passed through the muscle of his upper thigh, missing the major blood vessels but causing significant bleeding. As she worked to stop the hemorrhaging, she kept her weapon ready to engage any threats that appeared. "Hayes, you're going to be fine, but I need you to put pressure here while I get this sealed up," she said, her voice calm and professional despite the chaos around them. The first of the enemy vehicles came into view, a technical truck mounted with a heavy machine gun that immediately began raking the compound with devastating fire. Collins engaged the vehicle from his overwatch position, his shots precise enough to eliminate the gunner, but more vehicles were arriving behind it. "We've got multiple technicals with heavy weapons," Collins reported through the radio. "They're setting up to surround the compound. We need to move now, or we're going to be trapped." Commander Mitchell assessed their tactical situation quickly. The enemy had superior numbers and firepower, but the team still had the advantage of superior training and coordination. However, with 2 wounded team members, their mobility was compromised, and the longer they remained in position, the worse their situation would become. "Collins, can you take out the engines on those vehicles to slow them down?" Mitchell asked. "Negative, sir. Too much cover and they're staying mobile. But I can keep the gunners busy while you move to the extraction point." Maria finished treating Hayes' wound, ensuring that he could move despite the injury. Rodriguez was maintaining effective fire against the enemy positions, but his ammunition was running low. The team's situation was becoming more desperate by the minute. That's when Maria noticed something that changed everything. From her position near the compound wall, she could see that one of the enemy vehicles had positioned itself in a location that would allow a skilled marksman to take out multiple targets with a single shot. The fuel tank and ammunition storage were positioned in such a way that a well-placed round could eliminate the threat entirely. "Commander, there's a shot available on that lead technical, but it would require extreme precision at this range," she said, pointing out the target to Mitchell. Mitchell studied the position she was indicating and immediately understood what she was suggesting. The shot would require someone with exceptional marksmanship skills to thread the needle between multiple obstacles at a distance of over 600 meters. It was exactly the type of challenge that separated elite snipers from regular marksmen. "Collins, we need you to take an impossible shot," Mitchell called through the radio. "Doc's identified a target that could eliminate the lead vehicle, but it's going to require everything you've got." Collins' voice came back immediately. "Sir, I can see the target, but there are multiple obstacles in the way. Wind conditions are variable, and I'm dealing with heat shimmer from the engines. This is going to be extremely difficult." Maria grabbed the commander's field glasses and studied the target more carefully. Her medical training had taught her to see details that others might miss, and she had an idea that could make the shot possible. The key was timing the shot to coincide with a brief moment when all the obstacles would align perfectly. "Collins, I can walk you through this shot," she said into the radio. "I can see the target clearly from this angle and help you with the timing." There was a moment of silence before Collins responded. "Doc, with all due respect, this isn't a medical procedure. This is advanced precision shooting under combat conditions." "Petty officer, I qualified expert marksman with the M24 sniper weapon system before I went to medical school," Maria replied calmly. "I may be a medic, but I understand ballistics and precision shooting. Trust me on this one." Mitchell looked at her with surprise, realizing there was yet another layer to her qualifications that hadn't been mentioned in her official file. "Collins, take the shot when she tells you to. That's an order." Maria studied the target area, calculating wind speed and direction based on dust patterns and the movement of debris around the vehicle. She could see that there would be a brief window when the heat shimmer would clear and the obstacles would provide the clearest shot possible. "Collins, in about 30 seconds, there's going to be a brief lull in the engine heat that will clear your sight picture. When I give you the word, aim for the junction between the fuel tank and the ammunition box. The secondary explosion should take out the entire vehicle." "Understood, Doc. Standing by for your call." Maria continued to monitor the conditions around the target vehicle, her training as both a medic and a marksman allowing her to see details that others might miss. The enemy fighters were completely unaware that they were being targeted, focused instead on trying to establish a perimeter around the compound. 10 seconds, Collins. Get ready." Rodriguez and Hayes maintained suppressing fire against the other enemy positions, while Mitchell coordinated the team's movement toward the extraction route. Everything depended on the success of this single shot to break the enemy's advantage and allow them to escape. "Now, Collins, take the shot." The crack of Collins' rifle echoed across the desert, followed a heartbeat later by a massive explosion as the enemy vehicle erupted in a fireball that eliminated multiple threats simultaneously. The secondary explosions from the ammunition storage created chaos among the remaining enemy forces and opened the corridor the team needed to reach their extraction point. "Outstanding shooting," Rodriguez called out as the team began their tactical withdrawal. "That wasn't just me," Collins replied through the radio, his voice carrying a new respect for Maria's capabilities. "Doc called that shot perfectly. I couldn't have made it without her guidance." The team moved quickly toward the extraction point, with Maria providing medical support to keep Hayes mobile despite his wound. Mitchell's shoulder was holding up under the pressure dressing she had applied, allowing him to maintain command of the operation. As they reached the extraction zone, the sound of approaching helicopters indicated that their ride home was on schedule. The mission had been successful beyond their wildest expectations, with critical intelligence recovered and all team members returning alive despite the intense resistance they had encountered. Commander Mitchell turned to Maria as they waited for the helicopter to land. "Santos, I owe you an apology. When I read your file, I knew you were qualified, but I had no idea you were this versatile. That shot coordination was incredible." Collins approached them, his sniper rifle slung across his shoulder. "Doc, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've never seen anyone call a shot like that under those conditions. Where did you learn to do that?" Maria smiled, the adrenaline finally beginning to fade as the helicopter touched down. "Before medical school, I spent 2 years as a designated marksman. Turns out that understanding anatomy and physiology translates pretty well to understanding ballistics and physics." As the team boarded the helicopter for extraction, there was a fundamental shift in the dynamics between them. Maria was no longer seen as just a medic who had been assigned to their team. She had proven herself to be a complete operator who could function effectively in multiple roles when the situation demanded it. Rodriguez helped Hayes into the helicopter while Maria did a final check on his wound. "Doc, I've got to ask you something. Why didn't you mention the marksman training when Collins was giving you grief earlier?" "Because actions speak louder than words," Maria replied simply. "I knew that eventually the mission would require everything I had to offer. When that moment came, I wanted to be ready." Commander Mitchell secured his pack containing the intelligence materials as the helicopter lifted off from the extraction zone. The mission had been a complete success, but more importantly, he had gained a new appreciation for the importance of not underestimating people based on their primary job classification. As they flew back toward the forward operating base, Collins leaned over to Maria. "Doc, I owe you a serious apology. When I said you were just a medic, I couldn't have been more wrong. You saved all our lives tonight, not just with your medical skills, but with everything you brought to this team." Maria nodded, accepting the apology with the same professionalism she had shown throughout the entire operation. "We're all part of the same team, Collins. When everyone does their job at the highest level, missions succeed and people go home safe." The lights of the forward operating base appeared in the distance as the helicopter approached for landing. The intelligence they had recovered would help prevent future attacks and save countless lives. But for Maria, the real victory was the knowledge that she had earned her place among elite operators through skill, determination, and the ability to perform under pressure when everything was on the line.